Now, the debate on the provision of a basic income grant is ongoing. Civil society groups say the introduction of the 350 social relief of distress grant provides some impetus for discussing a basic income grant. Others, like Business Unity South Africa, say it will have a huge unintended consequence, like spending cuts in other priority areas. But former Goldman Sachs SA CEO Colin Coleman has proposed an 800 Rand grant to unemployed South Africans. He joins us now to tell us why. Mr. Coleman, good morning and thank you very much for joining us, or good afternoon rather, it's after midday. Thank you very much for joining us here on All Angles on eNCA. On this channel, eNCA, several times myself, I've been interviewing a number of different people who have different views about the need of a basic social income grant for the unemployed. You are one of those who supports it. Why?
Hi, Dan. Good afternoon. Thanks very much for having me on. Essentially, I have supported the idea of a fiscal stimulus for the South African economy to spur growth in South Africa. And one of the ways we can do that is by providing effectively those who are most marginalized and unproductive in society with a leg up and a hand up. And the basic thought is that those 12 million South Africans who are unemployed, who have nothing and no hope of getting a job in the short term, by getting an income, a targeted income of 800 Rand a month or something like $50 a month, they would be able effectively to buy the essentials, food, clothing. It will cut poverty in South Africa, many people say, by half, and effectively be able to also save a little bit to start informal businesses that have been decimated in the pandemic. The combination of that and providing support to small businesses would be one of the major forms of stimulus for the South African economy to get growth going again. We can't, Dan, operate with a population growth rate above our current economic growth rate over the last decade. We have to get growth going again. And international experience is that fiscal stimulus effectively assists these countries to get the growth engine moving again.
Yeah, I mean, just last Friday, I interviewed a social anthropologist here, Dr. Nosipho Mgomezulu from Wits University, who believes that other than just inspiring economic activity, a basic income grant will also bring back dignity, particularly to the young people, and give them hope, judging by how the extra 350 Rand of the special COVID-19 grant has been welcomed by the people who are really poor.
Yeah, it's very distressing to see, the extent of poverty on the ground, and obviously, this amount of money, which is actually very modest, moving the 350 grant essentially, and grant up to 800 Rand a month, will make such a massive difference in the lives of 12 million South Africans. It's very important to put in context what our percentage unemployment rate of 34% narrow means. It means that 15 million people are working and 12 million people are not. So you're talking about, effectively half of the society who would benefit massively from such a targeted income relief.
Okay, so what about, I mean, you are a top businessman. What about those people who say, it's going to cost the fiscus too much money and will create a dependency mindset, people depending on the state for a handout?
Yeah, I 100% have sympathy with their views, but let's bear in mind what we have to do is look at the big picture macroeconomic situation. And what I effectively did was wrote an article which basically said that South Africa has a growth problem, because when we look at our fiscal ratios, net debt to GDP, it's really about what that GDP function size is. And our GDP has gone sideways. What we need to do is grow the economy. So in order to deal with our debt, which is roughly 71% of our GDP, which is it's pretty much in line with emerging market debt fiscal ratios at the moment. It's not out of line. we would have to effectively look to trying to stimulate the growth function in order to bring our debt to GDP ratios down. Now, if we undertake targeted, calculated risks around certain aspects like fiscal support for the unemployed and for small businesses, that should help spur growth. So this growth function is related with the stimulus. I'm not suggesting that one must just throw debt at the problem. I also make the point and continue to make the point that we need structural reforms in our economy to drive a higher rate of economic productivity and bring down the cost of investment for private sector. Because what we want is we want to see much more private and public sector fixed investment in the economy. But our regulatory overburden is such that it detracts from the returns on capital and increases the risks on those returns. And we have to fix that in order to get a sustainable picture. But I'm not suggesting we should just throw debt at the problem. I'm suggesting we need to target a fiscal stimulus and at the same time modernize and reform our economy.
Yeah, I mean, we currently are dishing out quite a big chunk of the national budget into the social welfare net. I mean, it shouldn't really be that much. In my view, I'm not a numbers guy, but from 350 to 800, if you add the other numbers, you could come up with this basic income grant. Is there anywhere else, Mr. Coleman, where South Africa can learn from, where this sort of thing is being used or has been used successfully to spur economic growth?
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, if you look at the major economies in the world, the United States, China, Europe, the United Kingdom, they have all undertaken in the post-pandemic environment massive fiscal stimulus through individual income support measures to individuals, plus income support measures and fiscal support in both debt and equity schemes for businesses. If you look at the United Kingdom, for instance, their relief packages for businesses have been, extremely supportive, up to 80% or even in some cases 100% guarantee schemes from the government for loans that are given to businesses. In the United States, a very significant amount of individual income being provided in the forms of either tax relief or direct income payments to individuals throughout the United States. This has been absolutely vital to helping people survive the pandemic and get the growth function and the engine in those economies moving again. As I say in this article, China and the United States, they both have problems. You have the debt ceiling problem in the United States, you have the Evergrande situation in China. But what is remarkable is how they both apply the brake and the accelerator through their fiscal and monetary support to keep the economy moving and make sure that none of this disrupts the long-term objectives they have. Unfortunately, in South Africa, whilst we do some of this, we are not driving the engine room of growth. And the engine room of growth depends on productivity. It depends on the lowest rung getting income support, so there's more money that they can use to buy goods, and they're going to buy all those goods, whether it's food or clothing, in South Africa and back into the South African economy. And we have to get our growth engine moving through much greater confidence for private sector investment in the fixed investment space in South Africa. But that needs a whole bunch of regulatory issues to be sorted out, including labor rigidities, the empowerment ownership transfers, our relative costs of levies and taxes, the inefficiencies of state companies, the municipalities, and the high cost of the public sector, which includes expensive logistics, not to mention the hidden costs of corruption and crime in South Africa.
Yeah, no, very, very valid points. I mean, I wish we could discuss a little bit more, but as you say, the idea of a basic income grant is not a radical one. It's a necessary one if we really want to shift a little bit the gears towards economic growth. Thank you very much. That's Colin Coleman, former CEO at Goldman Sachs SA, just written an article about why a basic income grant for South Africa, for the unemployed, for the 12 million people who have nothing, and should be implemented. He says it's necessary, it's not radical. And he was talking to us there from Paris. So